I believe that all amplifiers should have a built-in reverb, but not all of them do. Carl Martin are here to help with this, their Headroom Mini, a miniaturized and digitalized version of their very famous Headroom Spring Reverb. I'm going to put this in the effects loop of my Marshall JTM Studio because that doesn't have a built-in reverb. Straight off the bat, that is a great sounding spring reverb. Let's go over the details of the pedal. You have two reverbs in one, or rather two instances of the same reverb. You've got level of that reverb mixed with your dry tone, left less, right more. Then you've got tone of the reverb, so darker to the left, brighter to the right. Then we've got decay length, so how long that reverb lasts for with this mini pot here. Then this switch is the bypass on and off, and then this one selects from bank A to bank B, like so. Firstly, here it is, just the clean sound. Here's reverb A, which I used in that intro riff. And here's B, which is the same settings, just lower in the mix. So if you just want a sort of meat and potatoes, you're playing some rhythm and you want... That's fine. It sits there, you don't really notice it. Then you can get super dramatic. And yes, if you have the decay about, halfway, and the mix about halfway, the tone about halfway, you get a rather pleasant sound. And we can play something rather predictable. Great. Right, let's add in a bit of drive from the Boss SD1 and see where that gets us. Bit too much, let's try B. Let's go all the way big now, like that. So that's massive, and I'll adjust the tone as I get to it. And I'll add the Pico pod for some cathedral organ. We'll start with it off. That's lovely. And if you have the Pico pod without the reverb, it sounds a bit synthetic. And the Headroom Mini just adds the realism, adds the space for it to go in, which any reverb does, but this one's doing it really well. I dig it. I should add that this is stereo in and stereo out, but I'm running it in mono at the moment. There's another socket just here, which is for remote switching. Now I've got the Headroom Mini in front of me here so I can access it, but if I was on stage, I'd probably put it on top of the amp, or I could put it on top of the amp and put it to the effects loop without running massive cables to the front of the stage, which is effectively what I'm doing now. That's why this remote switch comes in handy. If you have a single foot switch like this, or even a double, that'll work. You can plug it in to the remote like this, and then if you had a really long cable like I've got right now, you can put that to the back of the stage, or even run it to your switcher and select the different types of reverb using this. Sadly, what you can't do, or what I can't figure out, you can't turn the reverb on and off, but you can switch from A to B. So you could use that as a reverb on and off by having one with the mix off and then having one with the mix up really high, so that's effectively on and off. I don't know how to actually switch it on and off. You can't seem to do that, which is a bit of a shame. In defense of it, I would always have at least a little bit of reverb on there, and then I might want some sort of character reverb later, which again isn't so characterful because it's still spring, but it's a good one. Let's see how dark we can make it, and I'll have it big and dark, and then we'll sweep through that tone all the way to the top. Turn the pog off maybe. Ah, that's interesting. When you have the remote switch in, you can't switch it on the pedal. It makes sense, I guess. Right, so, A. Have that a bit more usable, and you might find something. I quite like it dark. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a distortion on the Iron Horse from Walrus Audio, and we hear this distort up nicely with some dark reverb. Whoa! Things suddenly got really noisy. The Headroom is adding noise, so it adds noise to any signal I've put through it. That's one of the downsides, but when you're on high gain, I'm usually using a noise gate anyway. And also with my Fender Deluxe Reverb, I'm kind of used to that noise from the real reverb, so I don't know if the noise is there intentionally, but it is there. And it's not a single coil pickup noise, it's a hiss. It makes me want to do some swells. Although that sounds like a room reverb. Let's max that spring, and let's give it the max of everything. Let's switch guitars for a moment and give it some good old classic rock with humbuckers and see how it sits as a meat and potatoes reverb. Let's go to B, shall we? It's more of a sort of mid-room size, isn't it? The issue for me is that at this price point, there are so many reverb options. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the best reverb I ever used and you don't need to get another reverb, because I wouldn't be telling the truth. What I will say is that this is an extremely reliable, predictable, and real sounding reverb that has a great option of having those two different settings. I know a lot of players are using digital recreations at the moment in things like quad cortexes and HX stomps and even really cheap reverbs, and a lot of people are happy with those. And if you're happy with those, stick with them. But if you want something that is just special, then you should be considering the Headroom Mini. As I said, I've been using it in numerous videos. Firstly, no one's complained about the reverb, and secondly, I feel that those videos were... I felt better as a player because I had some nice space to sit in, and that's thanks to this pedal. I am aware that I've not run it in stereo yet. I'm not set up here for stereo. So what I'll do now is come out of the amp and go into the Walrus ACS1 Mark II. That's a stereo amp simulator, and we'll hear what that sounds like. For me, the Headroom Mini is an enjoyable and believable reverb that I'll happily sit inside of. If you're into surf and things like that, this doesn't quite drip, but I do enjoy what it does. And you can't kick it like you can the original Headroom, so you can't get those reverb crashes. However, if you want something on the back of your amp, on the back of the stage, and you need to set it up at the front of the stage with turning it on and off and having it go through your effects loop, this is great for it. If you want something that is compact and does sound springy, this is great for it too. If you want something that is cheap, this is not it. So this sadly comes in at, I think, more money than it, not that it should, but more money than many people will want to spend on this. And that is really the biggest problem with this pedal, is that it's just a little bit over where it should be price-wise. That being said, if you're after something simple, then this might just scratch your reverb itch. A big thanks to Face Distribution for sending this out for review. There are links to it in the video description should you want to pick one up, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!